what's going on, y'all? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And you're about to watch a little OTB LSU.
We're going to give you all the latest, greatest between LSU football, baseball, women's basketball, softball, and everything in between.
Bottom line, if you want to talk Tigers, keep it locked, subscribe, like it, and we hope you enjoy. Let's flip to the other side of the ball. And when Arkansas is on offense, Jake, I will say this. This film was one of the most mixed bag of films that I've ever seen in my entire life, in that they came out and they looked really solid early on. Like, my initial notes on the offensive line were, okay, offensive line looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Combined with KJ Jefferson, an effective RPO game, they should be able to put up some points. Now, I think they were really missing Rocket Sanders this last games. I don't know if those backs behind Rocket don't really feel dynamic at all. Jake, you could break down their reads better than I did, but to my kind of untrained eye, it looked like they were not doing their O-line any favors in terms of making the correct reads, being patient, where the hole was. But here's where it gets weird. Again, I really like the O-line early on. Their captain is the left guard, but they seemed to get weaker and weaker as the game get on. Like, the more I watch, I'm like, okay, BYU's D-line's actually, like, shedding them, right? So I want to see those violent hands from Mason Smith last week that he didn't have at the beginning of Grambling, that he got as the game went on a bit longer, and that and then I thought he had better last week as well. I know Mekhi Wingo's going to be able to have success in some of these matchups. And then by the end of the game, Jake, BYU was Arkansas led this game 31-21 halfway through the third. They ended up losing the game 38-31. They had a ton of short fields to work with. Arkansas did a ton of opportunity. They put more points on the board. All they got was one field goal attempt, which they missed. And late in that game, Jake, BYU was just rushing for and consistently winning.
Yeah.
So there's enough there with the weakness that I've seen in LSU's defense, the strength of KJ Jefferson, and how good the offensive line looked when it was playing well, where, like, I'm still afraid of the LSU cover. I want to be painfully clear. I think LSU wins this game. No, like, full stop. I think they probably win it by double digits. What is it, though? Like 18.5, 19?
I saw it open at 18. Yeah.
There's maybe just enough offensively from Arkansas where I don't feel great about that number.
So for me, it's kind of the same in the coverage stats that we gave you. All right, let's flip the ball over. What about how they want to run the football? Are they really going to line up and run a version of zone out of their 30 runs 22 times? They might. That might, be what they do, because you look at it, they ran 8 outside zones, 14 inside zones. They only ran 1 power, 1 counter, and 2 pull leads.
Yeah, I was going to say, who's the O coordinator now? I know they brought in a good
Enos,
name.
right?
Yeah, they brought in Enos. Enos and the offense felt like they maybe weren't always on the same page or something. I don't know. I did not like the play calling.
But so for that, again, like, it is hard to kind of – did they think they just had the advantage because of who they were? Well, I mean, they got beat, so maybe they shouldn't have. And they played BYU a year ago, but they've been favorites in all 3 of their games. They won the first 2, lost this one. How much did they think they could just line up and do that? Because if you want to run out of 30 running plays, 22 be a version of zone, again, that plays into LSU's hands. I think that's the run fits that they have trouble with are not the zone schemes. They were some of the gap scheme stuff. And so, all right, if that's what you want to do, then individual matchups, you're saying that, Mekhi Wingo, Mason Smith, whoever it might be, that you feel like you can – Xavion Jones, who had another good game. So is that what we're going to see? It looks like that's who they are. Are you going to play cover 1 on defense and you're going to run zone on offense? If you are, that plays into LSU's hand.
Yeah, I agree that it does, and I think that – so that's when they're running the ball. Like you said, when LSU struggled this year is when Florida State was attacking them with angles and whatnot.
Yeah.
One-on-one, I still like Smith, Wingo, Jordan Jefferson, and those guys, and Xavier Jones, who had a huge game last game. Linebacker-wise, I know Spates is probably – who would you start at linebacker for LSU? You got Penn, you got Witt, Spates. West is still in there, but West is probably 4th in there. Am I missing anyone?
I mean, depending on what the health is of Omar Spates, we'll have to see. Because you could tell. I mean, you go back and you watch the Grambling game. I mean, he's hobbling out there.
Yeah.
You could tell he was just not right. I liked what Weeks brought to the defense. I mean, he led the team with 8 tackles. He got the start on the road against Mississippi State, so who's to say he wouldn't get it if Omar Speights is not fully healthy? I would expect him to get the start again. There was a real electricity in his body, you could tell, right? I mean, he flew to the football. It looked like he was at a different speed than some of the other linebackers that have been in there so far this year. So if you get Omar Speights back healthy, I think as a healthy player, he can really help you. But I like rotating Weeks in there. I thought Greg Penn had a nice game. And you and I were talking about it. Like, that was a Greg Penn game.
That was a Greg Penn game.
Like, what Mississippi State was trying to do, that was a game that was going to play into his strengths, and I thought he had a nice day. So
I would say this is kind of a Greg Penn game as well, no? I mean, does Arkansas threaten you? I mean, don't get me wrong, they're not the just run the ball attack that Mississippi State was trying to do. It's not that extreme, obviously, but I don't know that I see Greg Penn as being some like big weakness against this
You better
Arkansas
have somebody
team.
that's ready to tackle KJ Jefferson.
That is true.
Whoever that linebacker is, you need to get to know that quarterback because, I mean, he is going to be impactful in this one. He is, we know, 6'3", 250 pounds. You're not going to have to look hard for number one. I mean, he will be right there. And so which linebacker do you feel like gives you the best opportunity that if he runs the Q counters, if he runs the Q powers, whatever it might be, zone reads, that you can get him on the ground?
Yeah, Trent J. Rose says Enos is taking the KJ out of KJ. He's a shell of his former self, and I'm telling you, this O-line is trash. I mean, yeah, I guess that's probably right. I mean, KJ did look uncomfortable for the majority of this game, and a lot of times, Jake, when he was dropping back, he was holding on to the ball. His reads, they weren't working out. Like the opportunity to get some sacks will be there, whether you want to rush 3, spy Perkins, rush 4, spy Perkins, put Perk on the edge. If you can get interior push. Now, KJ is an experienced enough quarterback where if he feels pressure from the outside, he's not going to panic. Like last year, remember when he was out, the Arkansas quarterback, I can't remember who the backup was, but when he felt Perkins coming off the edge, he would start to run backwards, which is the last thing you want to do against Harold Perkins. KJ Jefferson is very cool and collected. He will step up in that pocket, meaning 2 things. First off, if you're Mason Smith or you're any of those interior guys, Mekhi Wingo, you get push up the middle, you might hook the homies up on the outside, but in the same token, you might get hooked up from KJ stepping up into you. So I'm really looking for this front 4 for LSU to set the tone this game.
All right, let me flip it to you. What would you do with Harold Perkins this game? We saw his role change from week 1 certainly to week 2. Week 2 to week 3 was even a little bit different. When you look at this matchup, knowing that KJ Jefferson is the one guy on that Arkansas offense that can probably scare you the most just because of what he's done in the past, what would your role with Perk be?
I mean, I love this kind of nickel Sam that they've started to work with him on. I feel like he's actually can be successful in coverage there as well, whether it's like in the flat or, we even saw him man up in the end zone last game. But this is probably a game where a lot of value could be had from spying him.
Yeah.
BYU had success when they would rush 3 and just keep a 4 spy hanging around the line. Nobody's better in the country at that probably than Harold Perkins. So I don't know. I don't really think it's that different, right? I mean, I think sometimes you can bring him off the edge and he will dominate these Arkansas tackles. And then, like I said, other times you rely on maybe Mason Smith, Savion Jones, or Braden Swinson and Mekhi Wingo to get that pressure and let him kind of sort it out. What would you do with him?
I mean, probably more the same. Now, I would probably start out with the idea that he's going to be a rusher and kind of play more the nickel Sam than the true spy until almost I have to. Until almost that they show me, Arkansas shows me that they'll go back to some of the things that KJ's done in the past.
That makes sense.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I wouldn't start off necessarily there, but you always know you have that in your back pocket as an adjustment.
And to be fair, I mean, there was maybe 1 or 2 plays made with KJ's legs this last game.
Mm-hmm.
It was not didn't they used to run him a ton in the past?
Oh, I mean, he was, like I said, I went back. He was Q counter, Q power, and getting the extra blocker. And now he took a lot of shots, and it was tough for him to stay healthy. So maybe that's why they went away from some of that. But in this game against BYU, he had 13 carries. Now, he only had 21 yards, take the sack yards away from the quarterback in college football, as we all know. But, I mean, he ran 13 times. And so they'll still do it. but not like not to the same.
None of it was that effective.
Scheme.
He had
Yeah,
one
and not
good
to the
one.
same. He had one run. You're right, 19-yarder, but not to the same scheme that they did before.
Yeah, I think now that we're talking this out, I'm like, man, maybe LSU does cover. The bottom line though is, after film review, Arkansas, just a team with too many weaknesses that makes too many mistakes. I mean, you look at the offense, you're like, hey, how did you put up 31 halfway through the third and not score again? We're just talking too many mistakes. What bad teams do? Negative plays, giving up sacks when you can't have them, pre-snap penalties, and like huge pre-snap penalties. A false start on a 4th and 1. BYU had the ball. Arkansas desperately needs to get it back. It's 3rd and 5. They jump off sides, automatic first, not automatic, but it translates into a first down. You're driving to win the game. You're down to like the 15. You get a holding. You get a false start. Next thing you know, you're back at the 50. It's you turn the ball over. I mean, on the last play of the game, BYU rushes 4. The left tackle gets smoked, and KJ Jefferson fumbles for like the 3rd time this game. So it's just they're not the best to begin with. The OC doesn't seem to be getting the most out of this offense. And again, Rocket Sanders probably changes some of that if he's available and healthy and playing like Rocket Sanders can. And you just make too many mistakes. So look, I think LSU very clearly wins this game. I think today on Wednesday, I'm staying away from the spread.
That's a big number. that is a big number, and I don't really care about that anyways. Like, you want to go out there, you want to continue off of what you did against Mississippi State. They have a very veteran player in KJ Jefferson that a lot of people before the season thought that he was undervalued, wasn't talked about enough. We have seen him go out there and win games, not single-handedly, but have a pretty big say into who won the game, and we'll see how they use him in this one. Defensively, they've got Dwight McGlothern, who we all know here at LSU is a very good corner. In fact, probably the best rusher for Arkansas is Landon Jackson, who also started his career at LSU.
He actually was pretty invisible until the fourth quarter.
He had 3.5 tackles for loss.
No, I was going to say fourth quarter he started to pop off. He wasn't. There wasn't much there. And then all of a sudden I was like, okay, 40. I see. I was like, I recognize him. Landon Jackson.
So I mean, you know this team very well.
Yeah.
You should have success in a lot of spaces here. You got to handle your business. It's going to be a night crowd. It's going to be the best crowd, obviously, that you've had this year. It's almost going to be like a home opener for you. And I'm not trying to throw shade at Grambling, but that's just the case. And so you're going to have every advantage. Now you got to go out there and take full advantage of those advantages.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that's maybe giving me a bit of hesitance on the spread. I mean, you look at last year's game, Jake, in which clearly you should have won that game by a much wider margin. And clearly the biggest difference between last year and this year is the offense and Jaden Daniels and how well they're playing right now. But this does have a feeling of like Saints-Panthers, right? This is a divisional game, essentially. And these divisional games have a way of maybe being a bit closer than you would think that they should be on tape. But again, that said, I exit this film feeling very confident about your Tigers Saturday night in Death Valley. Wow, Jake, what incredible takes.
I mean, those guys, they're just the best.
I think so. And if you think so, again, hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when we post every single day here on OTB LSU.